Today's Tuesday, March 28th. There was a historic vote this week.
That's right. 2-1. We've decided not to change the flavor of M&Ms in the martini glass because peanut butter is the only ones that Wendell won't eat.
I don't have a thing for peanut butter M&Ms. I mean, they're okay, but...
We're going to get a lot of comments about that because I think that's unpopular.
Everybody's going to abandon the Patreon now because I don't like peanut butter M&Ms as good.
You're going to have to stream yourself eating a pound bag of peanuts. Like, all right, I'll do it.
Peanut butter M&Ms, I think, are best in vanilla ice cream. It is okay in vanilla ice cream, but by themselves, the quantity of M&Ms that I'm used to eating by themselves, no. It's just
I've never even thought about trying that. I guess that would work.
Could be worse. Speaking of which, our Patreon, thank you. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, you have our patrons to thank. So, think about becoming a patron if you haven't already. We really appreciate our Patreon support. And we mention it because we've updated our goals. We've been running pretty steady at around $3,500 a month for a few months now. So we picked up another editor. There's 5 of us in total now. So we're doing a lot of, it's actually kind of surprising. We're able to produce more content that one person can keep up with. So now we have 2.
And now on to the bad news.
Yeah, I guess we can get on with the news. Thank you, patrons. We appreciate it. Our first story, the Wikileaks CIA dump, kind of a follow-up, kind of more information. Wikileaks' new dump shows how the CIA allegedly hacked Macs and iPhones almost a decade ago.
This one's a little bit more terrifying than the last one because the last one, most of them were older and have been patched. And if you're security conscious, and especially if you're like, oh, I use Linux and I secure all my ports and I'm totally in control of this, they can't get to me because I'm paranoid. Well, it turns out they can.
They apparently have a mechanism in place to make it that much easier to get to you without even actually getting to you. There's this story from 2014. The internet never forgets, right? This 2014 Tor developer, Andrea Shepard. An order for a laptop was placed. At the source address is California, the destination address is Seattle, and yet it was routed through Virginia. Why would this laptop be routed through Virginia?
Oh, I can't see. Isn't there somebody's headquarters in Virginia?
CIA, NSA.
So, with the last leak, one of the big things that was it made it less of a smoking gun is they were never talking about who they were targeting. So it was always the asset or whatever.
The enemy.
They're clearly very careful about not documenting that kind of thing. But with these 2 stories, you can sort of put 2 and 2 together. And this Tor developer is an American citizen and not suspected of crimes.
Not a criminal.
So why would you rootkit this person's hardware?
I'll tell you why. It's because they will give you access to the kinds of things that they're working on. You can know the source code. You can know all the stuff right from the source, right from the actual developer. And so I really, really have to wonder, first of all, there's apparently a system in place that makes it very easy for orders from online e-commerce companies through the shipping system to be flagged by an intelligence organization or an intelligence agency, either the CIA or the NSA. If that doesn't immediately, if you're not already at sphincter pucker level 2 from the fact that they're that plugged into the shipping industry and shipping companies, imagine that this goes back to 2014. And this Tor developer has never been charged with a crime, at least not that I could find from really furious Googling. And doesn't seem to have been under investigation, even doing a LexisNexis search. I could not really find anything about this, leading to any kind of criminal activity. So the assumption on my part is that there's no real criminal activity here, but these tools and this level of access and being able to plug, into shipping department, this is happening, and it is happening with little or no oversight, because I can't imagine that this is something that fits with current American law. It doesn't seem possible.
Well, I'm sure it's all swept under that national security rug. So it's probably legal in those terms.
There's a secret warrant somebody signed somewhere that will be forgotten.
And there's, there would definitely, nobody will ever get punished for this if it's not. So it might as well be.
This is also kind of a follow-up from last week. The Senate has voted to kill FCC's broadband privacy rules.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about what this means. Basically, it means they can sell your browsing history. That's the big part of it. There's some other things that are in there. But the last time we talked about it, it was just like, will this happen? Well, the Senate has voted. Now, it still has to go through the House, which is overwhelmingly expected to vote the same way, down party lines, which will pass it. Republicans will pass it. And then there's a last chance for Trump to veto it, which 99.9% won't happen.
Oh, Lord. Now, we should be absolutely clear here. Technically, the rules that the FCC had come up with for safeguarding privacy were not in effect yet. So I guess as of right now, ISPs can do whatever. There is an argument that I saw that was not entirely unreasonable sounding that said, well, the U.S. doesn't really have any good blanket privacy protection laws that this kind of stuff would come under. And so it's not really fair for internet service providers to not be able to trawl your search history. Meanwhile, Facebook, every website that has a like button on it is watching you. And Google, of course, is watching you through, Chrome and all the other stuff. And so you could maybe make the argument that there needs to be a level playing field for privacy in all of the stuff in law. And that's not a terrible argument. However, I haven't really seen anybody that is, going after this tooth and nail saying, oh, we're working on a thing to do that. It's more like, let's sell your stuff. That's fine. It's perfectly commercial. In fact, a lot of the quotes from the people that are voting against this are saying this is going to create tremendous commercial opportunities. And it's like, well, if they intended to protect your privacy, I don't think it's going to create a commercial opportunity there.
Yeah, but the argument that it's not fair that ISPs have to play by these rules if Google and Facebook don't, that's like your block is zoned differently so you can build a taller building, so let's burn down the neighborhood. That's a ridiculous. I mean, if we can't have total security, let's not have any security. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, it is. I will concede that it does require some mental gymnastics to get there. I'm just pointing out the most reasonable sounding argument that has come out of Capitol Hill so far.
Now you're going to hear a lot of, drum circle chanting and kumbaya about write your congressman, write your representative, speak out. By all means, do that. It ain't going to matter. It's not going to make any difference. Do it. I mean, make noise, make them uncomfortable. But if you really want to fight this, check out our VPN at the router video coming later this week. Just make sure they don't ever make another dime off of you.
It may actually already be live by the time this is live. So if it is, there are VPN affiliate links on our support page. There are VPN affiliate links. You can pick whatever VPN provider that you want. Do your own homework. And we get a small commission on sales for those. The three or four that we have on our affiliate page, we set up to do the router level VPN. So it's up to you to try them out and decide which company works best for you. We opted not to align ourselves with any one particular company because that's just how we roll.
But that will give you the smug satisfaction that your ISP isn't making any money selling your history because they don't know what you're doing.
If worst comes to worst, you can also, there are websites where you can click on links and it'll just pollute your search history with all sorts of random crap. And so good luck using that.
Well, but then your data cap, you're working towards your data cap.
Damn it. Well, in America, we apparently can be jailed for forgetting a decryption password.
So this, it's not, it's a loophole. So he's saying you're in contempt of court by telling me that you've forgotten something. And I guess passwords don't count as Fifth Amendment either. You're not allowed to not incriminate yourself by revealing a password, and you're not allowed to forget your password.
Well, they were making the argument. The legal argument seems to be a little more nuanced than that. The legal argument seems to be that, we don't need to know the password. Well, there's two parts of the legal argument. One is we don't need to know the password. We just need you to use the password to decrypt something. And the other part of the argument is, the password, like we're pretty sure of the contents of this box, and we've got circumstantial evidence for what the contents of this box is, and we think it's illegal. Child pornography, of course, because it's indefensible. And so the legal thing goes, as the legal thing goes, it's like, well, we're not compelling testimony. We're not compelling, whatever it is. We just want you to unlock the box. And the mental gymnastics to get there. I mean, it should be the case that if you have to divulge the contents of your mind in any way, Fifth Amendment protections should kick in. And that's what the EFF has argued. The EFF has filed an amicus brief that's saying, look, you should not have to divulge the contents of your mind in any way, shape, or form. And that is effectively what is being compelled here.
Can you imagine the conflicted nature of an EFF lawyer? Because, like, you're doing the right thing, but like 80% of the time you're defending child porn suspects. You might have some rough sleeping nights there.
Looking into the details of this too, I thought it was really interesting that he has actually given up a lot of his passwords. There were different passwords for like his phone, and then his phone had an encrypted application on it, and he gave up, the passwords to everything. And there was one sort of disturbing thing, but apparently not anything illegal. But on his phone, he did have a bunch of pornography that was in an encrypted application, but it was people of age. And apparently there was also pictures of his grandkids or whatever, but in their underwear, not naked and not doing anything sexual. So it's like, that's kind of weird.
I think it was just his external storage drives that do you think somebody would really like stand up for liberty and stay in jail for a long time just to prove that this is wrong?
Something like 17 months as of the article, which is,
if he's doing that, salute him. If he's not doing that, then he's, the worst kind of person in the universe. It's a really black and white kind of thing.
Yeah. And it is a very dangerous slope, I think, to try to compel these kinds of passwords. There's a point there too that it's like, oh, what if executives running companies, can mandate company-wide use of encryption, and then all of a sudden, information can't be discovered from companies on what they're doing. It's like, no, good old-fashioned police work is not out the window when when encryption is involved. It's like, oh, encryption makes it impossible for us to see anything. It's like, no, that's not true. You can still do good old-fashioned police work.
But it's so much easier just to have your laptop mailed to me and infect it.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like, what if there's something like that going on? Because you can't tell me that an agency that is willing to co-opt our entire shipping system in order to get access to your computer to install a rootkit in the EFI would totally not be willing to use you as a patsy in operations against foreign governments. Where's the line? It's like, oh, we're going to do that, but using you as a patsy against foreign governments, we're totally not going to do that.
Or if you're someone who is thwarting their efforts or dissenting publicly, child porn's a real vengeful and easy way to get you out of the picture.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about like Putin. It's like, oh, this person was critical of Putin, this Tor developer in Seattle. It's like Putin can dispatch his polonium assassins or whatever, and it's like, they didn't even post anything about it. It was actually an intelligence agency, but who would believe them?
I think I'm a little more worried about Langley than Moscow.
Yeah, that's going to be the theme for this episode. It's kind of weird. Changing gears a little bit, this is kind of a big deal involving printer cartridges, refilling printer cartridges before the United States Supreme Court. Good Lord, what is going on with this?
So if you're not hip to the printer game, they don't make any money selling you a printer. Like, I think they lose money on a lot of printers. All the money is from the accessories, and most of it comes from the ink. If you've ever looked at an ink cartridge and thought, why is this $50? That's why. That's how they make money. And they don't like it when other people sell them for cheaper.
So the situation with this is that Lexmark has a patent on ink cartridges, but third-party companies have figured out a way to just refill the existing ink cartridges. And so there are patents on the technologies associated with the ink cartridge, and there's a label on the ink cartridge that says for single use only, and it's just a label. So the question here is around something called patent exhaustion, and that is Lexmark selling you a device that really is a one-time use device, and it is somehow a violation of Lexmark's patent rights to use that device more than one time, more than the one time on its label? Or is the end recipient allowed to do that? And for me, it becomes sort of a question of ownership. I think if this is ruled in Lexmark's favor, it's going to open a Pandora's box, because you could patent anything and maintain control of it after the sale. Sort of the first sale doctrine is kind of out the window. And I think that's problematic for a lot of reasons.
Also, the kind of agreement that they're talking about here is it's when you open the box, you're agreeing to it. Now, of course, 99.9% of the people who buy this printer ink and open the box don't realize that they're agreeing to only use it once. And they don't even, who looks at it? No one realizes that they're even breaking an agreement when they have it refilled. So the consumer, their rights are being taken away from them and they're not even aware of it. So it's a really weird way to do business.
Now, there are some cases that have precedent where, like medical devices, there are some medical devices that are one-time use only. And so those, in those legal cases, it was ruled that, okay, yeah, that's totally a legit thing. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the Supreme Court looks at this, because this has already been through the court system, through 2 or 3 different courts, I think, at this point. And they've all ruled in Lexmark's favor that, yeah, you can control the product, in this way to prevent your patented stuff from being used this way. But I can't, I would like to imagine that the Supreme Court would not rule in Lexmark's favor, because it would create problems for a lot of other different industries when you really get down to it and when you really think about it. I mean, think about all the products that have lots of really awesome off-label uses, and then if all of a sudden it's like, oh, you want to use this thing in a kind of an off-label kind of a way, then no, it's just not even gonna matter anymore.
Does this mean that you can only store cookies in those cookie tins? Like you can't store screws and parts and everything else, sewing supplies?
If you can get a patent on that.
Well, it turns out that being sold a product and expecting to be able to do what you want with it is becoming more and more threatened. Now, if I said there was a product which ran an operating system that required you to verify with the vendor that sold it to you when you change a part, made you agree to insane user agreements before you could ever use it, had the ability to just turn it off remotely if they feel like you're violating that, yeah, what is that?
That sounds like Windows, the Windows license, because it's like, oh, I've put in a new whatever and I've got to reactivate Windows.
No, well, it does sound like Windows, but no, it's not Windows. It's a tractor.
It's a tractor. What is going on here? A tractor that deactivates because you've used unauthorized parts?
This is John Deere. And of course, they are iconic. They're one of the biggest tractor manufacturers in America, and I'm sure they're worldwide. So this is crazy. They sell you tractors, and let's say that you want to change the fuel system. A lot of farmers like to use alternative fuels these days. Well, you got to get a John Deere guy to come out and authorize the part change, and that costs you, I think, like $300-400. Want a new transmission? Not an unauthorized dealership. John Deere has to come out and authorize that new transmission.
Now, I was under the impression that John Deere would not authorize methane as a fuel for your tractor.
There was one guy in the article that talks about he was running methane, and no, I don't think, because they haven't tested that. They're, it's like, well, if this blows up, we don't want to be liable. So no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. But luckily there is an alternative.
Thanks to the Ukrainians. You could run Ukrainian firmware on your tractor, and the Ukrainians have hacked their tractors. And then after that, you can do whatever the hell you want with it.
Now, John Deere has been pressed about this, and actually there was legal cases about this where you can do this kind of thing, but there's an exception. Land vehicles cannot be affected by this. You're not allowed to do this if you're selling a land vehicle. So like, cars and whatever. Tractors fall under that. So when that legal precedent was set, there was a court case and they lost. They began to make anybody that buys a tractor sign this insane contract that basically agrees to the same thing, which probably isn't legal, but no one can really afford to fight them on it.
Because it's John Deere. The thing that's really wrong with this story is like, we've got to make America great again. I want to know why it wasn't the American farmers that came up with the hack. We've got to get the American farmers to the point where they're hacking software. They've got the computer science degrees. We need the farmers to do it on their own. It really bothers me that we've got to rely on people, Ukrainian farmers or Ukrainian hacker groups or whatever, to unlock our American tractors. We need to improve our education and make sure that American farmers know how to crack their own tractors.
I don't know. Something tells me that if you're the American tractor hacker, that your hardware is going through Langley before you get it.
How cool would that be? It's like it's coming on a semi and it's going through Langley first so they can spy on you through your tractor. Let's refer to that as a cractor. Also in the Wikileaks leak, hundreds of Cisco switches are vulnerable to a flaw found in those files. And so this is actually, I've never seen Cisco get quite this mobilized over a security thing before. but the switch hack has the attention of the it is unbelievable the level of response from Cisco on this. It is mind blowing.
Pretty simple to do as well. There's I think a telnet you can overflow, or you can just send it an SSID overflow.
Yeah.
Too many SSID characters.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, how did this ever get through QC? How did this ever get through quality assurance? And it's like, Cisco, your issues may be deeper than you realize.
And that affects an insane number of devices that are out there. So
yeah. See, the thing that most people don't understand, and I think a lot of journalists missed on this, is that Cisco is super sensitive to these kinds of issues right now because a lot of Cisco's bottom line depends on confidence in their products in foreign markets. And because of this, I mean, this is not the first time that Cisco has been embarrassed by this kind of thing. And this is actually really, really embarrassing for what it is at the switch level. This is going to be really bad news for Cisco's value as a company, I think. I think that it's going to shake a lot of foreign entities' confidence in buying Cisco. I mean, Cisco is quote unquote, the networking products company. That's how they project themselves. That's how they are in the market. And so it is understandable why they're having such a negative reaction to this. Hopefully, if we get a few more American companies with the kind of dollars that Cisco has, this might do an about face of this kind of like co-option of their hardware, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I think actually this is just going to translate into like if an Asian company or like a European company that does the same kind of stuff as Cisco, they're probably about to have a really good year.
if you have one of these, there's no fix. Turn off Telnet. That's all I got for you.
That mitigate. Well, actually, the release from Cisco said that probably mitigates it. But
Probably.
Yeah, but there may be other ways to access those services because those services are still running in the background somewhere.
Yeah. So
Neat. Yeah. AT&T and Johnson & Johnson pull ads from YouTube. Did we mention the Patreon support?
I think this list has gotten a lot longer since we put that story on the list. A lot of people are fleeing from YouTube. Now, if you remember, how long ago was it when YouTube did the new like YouTube Heroes and the
it's been a while.
Demonetizing certain channels?
5 or 6 months.
So YouTube made this big deal. It's like, oh, we're committed to, sanitizing our product. We don't want bad things out there because for the user, no, it wasn't for the user. It was for the advertisers. And this is why, because some people kind of got up in arms that their ads were running on what they call hate videos. I think some of them were legitimately like, ISIS videos and stuff like that, which makes sense.
But also PewDiePie.
Yeah, and like, the alt-right kind of thing, the left-right, I'm sure both sides complained. So a lot of these companies are like, we don't want this headache. They're just out. They're pulling all their advertising.
Yeah, Disney and everybody included. So this is probably, it's going to be interesting to see what Google does for this. But so far, Google is sort of 0 for 2 on how they respond to this. The ad ecosystem at Google, my own personal perspective on it is that it was already under attack substantially. We reported on the botnet news a few episodes ago about how there was this massive botnet that maybe is sending a lot of the ad commissions to a Russian crime syndicate, because a lot of people on YouTube are like, where did the ad money go? Because, 2 years ago, the ad money on YouTube was not terrible. And now, unless you've got, over 1 million subs, it's comparatively terrible for what it was. And it's not really that the money has disappeared. It's that the botnet has turned toward generating clicks and things like that so that those commissions can be paid out to, apparently a crime syndicate or a crime family or something like that. That's what we reported on before. But the surprising thing is that Google doesn't seem to have really responded to that in any kind of a public way. At least I would expect that the value of ads to have gone up as a result of Google responding to that in any meaningful way. And I can definitely tell you that hasn't happened. So then the question is, with these advertisers also pulling out, what effect is that going to have? Are the people that operate the botnet that's apparently still getting, false click ad dollars gonna step it up so that they still keep getting paid the way that they are, or what's going to happen? I don't think that Google. I haven't seen any indication from Google that they have a plan to deal with this, and it's going to be interesting to report on when we sort of learn more about it.
We might be looking at a "This is hate" button, and I'm sure that won't be abused because YouTube users would never do that.
Oh, you YouTube users. A little bit of good news, maybe. The dig once situation. So the Dig Once bill could bring fiber internet to much of the U.S. How is this going to happen? Basically, this is a law so that, like, if anybody has to dig up a road to repave a road or do whatever, they also put in lots of empty conduit to make it easy to run cabling.
This is great. And I think looking at it from the perspective of, okay, this gives us fiber, is they shouldn't be talking about it like this. This gives us any future technology as well. It's a big conduit. You can put whatever you want in it. So this sort of future, like, okay, we've come up with something amazing and new, but we have to get it to everybody's houses. And Verizon says that's going to cost $10 billion. Well, this prevents that argument. It's already there. You just run the cable.
Yeah.
So if you can get, as we build new roads and stuff, which the American infrastructure is like horribly aging.
Yeah.
There's some kind of terrible statistic. So we got to do this anyway. We might as well put this in. So it's coming up for a vote whether or not we should do that. I wonder which way the ISPs are lobbying here.
Yeah, AT&T. Actually, this is completely unofficial, entirely hearsay information, but maybe some of you guys in the industry can let me know for sure. But I had heard over a couple of beers with some people that work in, well, not beers, tea, and they were having beers. But over, it's just a very informal conversational, let's keep that in mind, that some of the large incumbent ISPs were lobbying really hard to make underground utilities sort of mandated in law. And the reason that they were doing that is because they don't have to give right of way for underground utilities or underground conduit to third parties. Whereas on a telephone pole, you can drive out to a telephone pole and you can go to a local town and you can say, hey, I'm founding Joe ISP, which is going to be a local ISP for this town. I got, a couple $100,000, $1 million, whatever, as my startup money. And I need space on these utility poles to run my lines. AT&T's giving me the runaround, or Time Warner's giving me the runaround, or whoever controls the poles is giving me the runaround. Please, city, help me get my lines on these telephone poles. And any city engineer can look at a telephone pole and plainly see, oh yeah, there's tons of capacity on this telephone pole. You can totally run your wires right here. And that's what's been happening for some of these cities that won't do their stuff. So some of the incumbent ISPs have been saying, let's put our utilities underground because the rules for right of way for underground is completely different. And so this is kind of in a response to that. This is federal, but there are some local laws that have said, okay, well, why don't we mandate that underground conduit be ran so that everybody has equal opportunity to be able to run whatever they need for the underground stuff? And it's like, ooh. So those companies that were previously arguing for underground utilities are now arguing against underground utilities because they don't control them, which is the key part.
And it's going to happen anyway. It's going to be your money anyway. We might as well do this. So like we said before, call your Congress people. It might not matter much, but do it anyway.
Yeah, can you imagine that call with the Congress people? And it's like, now, you need to support underground utilities if they do it at the road time, but you need to be opposed to underground utilities if it's controlled by the incumbent. I mean, how do you explain that to your Congress critter?
You don't. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how you explain it to them. You put it in an envelope with like $10,000 in cash, and you slip it to them. That's how that gets done.
It's like, oh yeah, it's just,
Well, the robots are taking over, but they've suffered a setback this week.
Apparently Uber's self-driving code is not quite what it was cracked up to be.
Well, now hang on. It wasn't the Uber's car's fault. Although this does bring up an interesting situation where it's like, okay, if you cut off the Uber car, it will kill you.
So what you're telling me is that we need like yellow caution tape on the bumpers or whatever so people know that it's,
I kind of like this as sort of like a Darwinian, like, to put these robot cars on the road, as long as they can 100% follow the rules and just murder everybody that doesn't, I'm almost okay with that. I mean, if they can minimize the collateral damage, it seems like a net positive.
So what we're going to end up with is like 20 million pound cast iron, like shipping death rigs.
Uber tanks.
Didn't I see this in Mad Max? That's what the new UPS fleet is going to be.
If you don't signal, they just run right over you.
Even if you signal, they run right over you if they've got the right of way because of the local laws or whatever.
But yeah, Uber has halted all the self-driving stuff. There was no passenger in this one. I think this was a test one. Somebody was behind the wheel, I think. But it is, the robots have to have those rules where even if you're wrong, they don't murder humans. So Uber hasn't done that yet.
Should we not kill all humans? Is that not allowed?
Even the bad ones.
Now, for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about robots taking your jobs, and I'm sure that everybody's super paranoid. Well, we've got good news for you. The Treasury Secretary says that he's not at all worried about robots taking your job. So clearly we were overreacting.
He said this in an interview. I think they quoted somebody like Musk or, like one of those big industry guys. And they were like, he says that robots are coming like right now. And this guy was like, no. We don't have to be worried about this at all. So the interviewer pressed him, was like, how long do you think? He thinks 50 to 100 years before robots will threaten your job. I don't know what that's based on.
Somebody needs to tell that to those people working for Foxconn in China.
Or, cab drivers.
It really, if I would really like to know if it's like, has that guy ever been to China? Has that guy seen some of those factory operations with robots and stuff in China? It is mind blowing. And, the fact that Foxconn just recently replaced a whole bunch of workers with robots and that other factory that went from a bunch of people to a bunch of robots. How's this going to play out?
And we've covered story after story. Every week we had Flippy, we had the self-driving stuff. There was another big automation thing. I think the Amazon warehouses. The robots, it's just a relentless, because they're so cost effective. But somehow this guy doesn't think those count, I guess.
I think that, I think I'm a happy person by nature generally, or at least I try to find the positive thing in anything. And there are just some jobs that I would rather be a robot, like food service and delivery drivers. It's like, if I don't have to interact with a human being to have, something like that, that sounds amazing. That's just
the angry mob behind the robot delivery driver, though. That's the trouble, and that's what they were trying to get to the bottom of with this guy. And if the government's official policy, if the Treasury Secretary is saying, no, we're just going to stick our head in the sand, this is going to go away, then the possibility of those mobs really spikes.
Yeah, I do like the lack of concern on his part. He's like, no, this would never happen. And it's like, do you know this would never happen because you guys just spent $25 million on R&D? Or you just feel like this will never happen? Because those are very different things.
Maybe he thinks that it's just definitely not going to happen in the next 4 years. And there's no way he's going to last beyond then. So, but even then, I think he's wrong. I think it's coming in the next 4 years.
Look, Bub, I'm due to retire by September of 2020, and that is not going to be a problem.
We'll talk about this then.
Now, you're going to have to help me with our next story, because I read this story like 50 times, and the words just kept running together, and blood shot out of my nose.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? Windows 10 spies on you, right?
Right. We've talked about the telemetry and how like the telemetry is built into critical system services now because people keep turning it off, and those are critical system services.
Now, Microsoft tells us that it's not really spying. It's not a big deal. And you can't turn it off for a lot of reasons. And those reasons have nothing to do with them wanting to spy on you and sell your data. None at all. So, bullet points here, not spying, can't turn it off. Are you with me so far?
I'm with you so far. This sounds familiar, yeah. It feels like stuff we've covered.
Now, the Chinese government, they're not playing those games. They're like, listen, we know about spying. This is spying. We're not using Windows 10. So Microsoft, rather than give up those millions of sales, has made a non-spying version.
You lost me.
No. See, this is not spying, but we've made a non-spying version.
I don't understand.
The critical systems where we can't take the spying out because it's critical, we took those out.
So, but it's China. Like Great Firewall of China?
Yeah,
like
China.
Tiananmen Square, China?
But this is the Chinese government. So it's not the same. The Chinese government cannot be spied upon.
But like China. But China has a more desirable version of Windows than America?
Just like the Ukraine has a more desirable version of the John Deere software than America.
But it's not spying. Or is it still spying for China?
Yeah, I'm sure it's spying in some regard. It's just not allowing Microsoft to see the results of said spying.
And so, it's funny because Microsoft also had that LTSB version of Windows, which is, the spy light version, I guess, of Windows. But that's even different than that. And so this is like the LTSB version of the LTSB version of Windows 10. And it's for China. Like, having firsthand experience with China, blood's gonna shoot out of my nose if I keep thinking about this. I don't understand.
Well, it's I don't know how to explain this to you anymore. It's clear to me.
It's not spying on me. It's not reporting to Microsoft. I don't understand. This is not. It's like a reverse Great Firewall of China, but for your operating system. I want a copy of this. Like, I would actually like to run this.
I think the lesson here, and of course, this would require such unified people power and sacrifice. It'll never happen. Is if you simply will not tolerate their crap, they will take the crap out. It's not an unwinnable game. You just simply have to not tolerate it and not buy their crap, and they will fix it.
So what you're saying is, if enough corporate customers raised enough hell, perhaps Microsoft would not do this anymore.
Well, they'd do it with like special corporate licenses. They wouldn't change the consumer version.
I think I'll just switch to Linux. It's probably easier. Well, Apple has had a bit of a run-in with some hacker types lately.
The story, it's hard to tell exactly how much danger this is. Now, there have been like several organizations, I think Motherboard and ZDNet, who reached out to him and said, give us samples, give us like 20 logins, and we'll see if they're real. In most cases, some of them were like out of date and gone or whatever, but the ones that existed, the passwords were correct. And so what's happening here is, these people say, we've got how many iCloud accounts? It's an insane number.
Yeah.
Like most of the iCloud accounts. Like we've got the passwords. We have the ability to delete them because iCloud has that as an option if you have the correct password. And we're going to, unless you pay us a ransom.
Yeah. So in iCloud, it's like, I lost my phone, wipe it remotely. It'll be more than glad to do that. So these guys could totally wipe out tons of iPhones, iPads, whatever your iCloud's linked to.
And they're not threatening the people directly. They're going directly to Apple. And it's like, listen, this will be such a PR nightmare for you. You must give. And I think they've given them a deadline. What is it? April 7th?
Yeah, April 7th.
So on April 7th, we will find out that either Apple has found a solution for this or everything's gone.
Make sure you use that lightning cable to back up your stuff before then, because your iCloud backups might be problematic.
Now they claim, they being Apple, so they're gonna try to spin this any way they can. If you use two-factor authentication, you're fine, and if you change your password right now, you're probably still fine. Now the thing about this is they don't know where this came from, because there are third-party services, like login via iCloud type thing. And it could be that they just cobbled together all these accounts from a bunch of those compromised services, but it is a really high number. So it might also be that iCloud itself has been compromised.
And think about all the viruses and botnets and spyware and stuff that's everywhere. I mean, people log in with their iCloud all kinds of places. So this could totally just be an amalgamation of some of the devices that have been co-opted by botnet, spyware, malware, that sort of thing.
But it does raise the question of, should you be logging in with iCloud when it's so prevalent that logging in with iCloud could get your everything deleted?
You heard it here first. 2017, the year of two-factor authentication for everybody. So if you have an iCloud password, just go ahead and change it. Change it right now. Just pause it. We'll wait. It's cool. Change your password.
Now, whether or not Apple is lying about this, and whether or not the CIA is lying, and whether or not everybody's lying in government, there may be pretty soon a new way to figure that out.
With eye tracking, apparently, the new polygraph.
Now, right now, all they've done is they've found a way to tell if you've seen something before, like a face. So your eyes react differently if you see a face that you recognize versus one that you've never seen before. So if it's like, have you seen the defendant? And you say, no, I've never met this person. Your eyes will betray whether or not you've actually seen them before. But that's just that they figured out how the eye moves when you're lying about that. So it's possible they could figure out how the eye moves when you're lying about everything.
Would you lie about being interested in watching movies in the theater at home ahead of schedule?
Well, for $30, it seems crazy, right? $30, who would pay $30? But what if you got 5 kids?
Yeah, if you've got 5 kids and you don't have to go out in public and you can watch the movie at home, that sounds like a plan.
And let me tell you, if you've got 5 kids, don't go out in public. You don't deserve to. Stay at home. Take care of your own mistakes.
And if you do go out in public, the Navy has this amazing new railgun that will fire projectiles at 4,500 miles per hour.
At pinpoint accuracy. That's the cool thing about railguns. So railguns, if you're not hip to railguns, it's just a magnet that shoots a metal rod. The other cool thing about it is like, we're out of ammo. Hammer some rods. There's no payload, there's no explosive, no warhead. It's just moving so fast that whatever it touches is going to be completely destroyed.
And that's thanks to our boys at Lockheed. Now, I saw a weapon kind of like this that used a copper, it was a copper slug that was like 300 pounds, and it used shape charges to aim. And that was at a visit to Sandia National Labs, and it's not classified or anything like that, but a 300-pound molten ball of copper is an amazing projectile. It is just unbelievable. You can very easily take out a tank. Like in the weapons test footage, everything in the tank that was not plastic was vaporized, and the tank was so hot that they couldn't touch it for 2 days. After spraying, like emptying 1 or 2 like fire trucks, like the portable fire trucks worth of water on the thing, and the steam, evaporating and that kind of thing, the tank was still so hot that they couldn't like touch it or look at the damage or whatever for like 1 or 2 days. They were testing on like a Russian MiG or something. And so the fact that we have a railgun now that can fire larger projectiles at 4,500 miles per hour, the amount of kinetic energy in that, I can't communicate to you how insanely destructive that is. So you should go watch the videos.
And that's a nuclear-powered battleship or a sub with some sort of lathe on board that can crank these rods out. You have a nearly infinite amount of, you can just start cannibalizing the ship if you have to. An infinite amount of power, near infinite coming from a nuclear reactor, near infinite amount of ammo coming from just blocks of steel or whatever you use, iron, and you've got an insanely powerful weapon.
Yeah, this is the Zumwalt class destroyer that we've mentioned a few times that has had some problems here and there, but overall, very impressive weapon.
They had the insanely the weapon system that cost hundreds of thousands to fire each time. So now you got one that costs like, $20 to fire every time. Oh, well, how much? I don't know how much steel that is. Ever how much steel it is, that's plus a little bit of electricity, that's what it costs.
We could just hammer old computers into roughly the shape that it needs to just launch old computers.
I could see there being like a, real flag waving thing. It's like, bring your car that doesn't run anymore down here and we'll hammer it into a railgun projectile. Send it, we'll kill a terrorist with your Ford Fiesta.
That sounds amazing. Meanwhile, as America doubles down on, coal and whatever else, solar is just, it's a game changer on so many different levels because it's getting so inexpensive. And Tata, which I think is the Indian power company, they've upped their panel production capacity to 400 megawatts. They've basically doubled their capacity at this point.
That's impressive. Now, and especially in India, because India is one of these countries where there's this crazy, like, we just launched the record number of satellites, but a lot of people don't have running water. It's like that kind of country. So to have solar power is huge for them.
But not only that, but their production capacity is also, something like, Tata Solar Power is a rated tier 1 module manufacturer by BNEF. It is shipped 1 gigawatt of modules to more than 30 countries, of which more than 60% was shipped in the first 5 years. So they're poised to become a major, major provider, and it could be transformative, not just for the Indian economy, because, solar power could bring electricity to the masses there, but also it could be really a good example for those of us in the Western world where we're like, yeah, there's still some coal. We can still get some stuff out of coal. Coal's not completely terrible.
I'm sure it'll be a situation where it's like, let them perfect it, and then we'll just steal all the designs when we run out of coal.
Oh, look at that. You messed up your patent application in the U.S. I'm sorry. It's been awarded to this defense contractor. Sorry, guys.
Now, lately, you've become quite the tweeter.
I tweet a lot. I'm sorry.
So, as a power tweeter, would you ever pay a subscription?
I don't know, maybe Twitter. So, I read this and it's like, okay, it's, I guess you're wanting to use like Twitter tools or whatever to actually make this go, to actually make this a thing. It's weird. It's sort of a weird commercialization approach, I think.
I think it's made to manage a lot, like more toward marketing, because you're managing like replying to everybody. And, it's like, hey, Domino's, I ordered a pizza and they delivered a tuna. And it's like, oh, I have to manage that. I have to like put it in this column. It's something I have to reply to eventually. That type of thing. Standard user probably doesn't really care.
Well, Twitter is weird though about like it already does monetize the crap out of its stuff, but it doesn't really communicate that with you in a really clear way. And I think most advertising companies don't understand how it works because of the poor communication from Twitter. What I mean by that is like when we're running a contest or when we're giving something away or whatever, and I do a tweet, we can go in the analytics and we can see, you know, I've got like 40,000 followers or whatever, and we can go in the analytics and we can see what the reach of that was. And it's usually like 5,000 people. So when you follow me, you're not going to see most of the tweets that I tweet. Like it just doesn't do anything with it. But if I pay Twitter, then I can pay Twitter to make sure that that tweet is promoted everywhere. And that'll be not just among my own subscribers, but also new subscribers and things like that. And that's how they make money. And that doesn't seem entirely unreasonable. They just do a really terrible job communicating that that is how that works.
Problem is, even with that, and even with the ads on the site, they're not making money. They're one of the, the new tech companies that still is operating on a loss.
In the red.
So they got to do something. I mean, that Goldilocks period only lasts so long when the venture capitalists just keep throwing money at you. Hey, we're Twitter. We shape, look, the president. The president's on our product every day. But at some point, you got to make money.
Yeah. I mean, really, when you look at it that way, in terms of like how long Twitter has been able to subsist on the venture capital, they are more than 3 standard deviations away from the mean, which is really impressive.
Well, you got to, I mean, if you look at it from somebody who's going to throw money at it, it's like, wow, it's a verb in the English language now that means to send a little tiny message, to tweet. It used to be a thing that birds did. No, not anymore. Now it's something else. So it is amazing how much of a household name they are and how much power they have. But how do you make money from that? That's what they're trying to figure out.
Are there any users of Visual Studio in the audience? Got some news for you. The blinking cursor uses 30% of your CPU.
Turns out the blinking cursor runs at a hot 60 FPS, which God's real important. You don't want to, you can't code at anything less than 60 FPS.
So 30 of those FPS, the cursor is on, and the other 30 of those FPS, the cursor is off. So we need to update the screen 60 times a second. Okay.
And that takes, was it 13% of your CPU on average?
Well, it depends on the CPU and a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, it's quite a bit of CPU to render a blinking cursor.
Amazing.
How did this happen? How did this get past quality control? I don't understand. How did this happen?
Now, this thing, we need to preface this. This has actually been solved, but it's still worth talking about.
It's funny. We got to laugh. If you use OneDrive on Linux, it is very, very slow. Very slow.
Now, you might be thinking, well, it's Linux. Why would Microsoft make their product compatible with Linux? It's probably just some little bug. It's no big deal. But here's the thing. So web browsers have something called a user agent, which is just this little text string that your browser passes when it does something with a website to say, hey, this is what kind of browser that I am. So, because sometimes the browsers, they don't like to all act the same. You got to do something completely different, Safari, when they have a crappy browser. Well, it turns out if nothing else changes, but your browser says that it's Edge or Internet Explorer, everything starts working at normal speeds.
Not only that, Chrome on Windows also works at normal speeds. But Chrome on Linux was not working at normal speeds. And it's really funny because at first the support drones were like, you need to use Office 365 on a supported operating system. And it's like, wait, Office 365 is web-based. What does the operating system have to do with this? Or do you not understand how software as a service on the web works? Is this a thing? So somebody spoofed their user agent, and sure enough, everything works fine if you're running Chrome on Windows on Linux, or you're running Chrome for Linux. It's fine. Also, Firefox had the same kind of symptom, from what I understand. Microsoft has sort of since fixed that, since they've been found out. So it performs as it should. The innocent explanation here is that there was something boneheaded in the code, like, if Windows and, browser, else if Mac OS and browser, else deliver the most horrible thing ever, deliver the most horrible code base that no one has ever used in forever. And maybe that's what it was, but no.
How is that innocent?
Well, laziness,
You're
I guess.
defending the indefensible here.
Yeah, it's really terrible.
No, I think this was malicious. This was ruin their experience, have them call support, and then tell them that they need to run a different OS.
You need to at least run Mac OS, and it's like, no. I guess Microsoft figures that enough people buy Mac that the profit margin there is so insane that even if they then cannibalize Mac's market share, it doesn't really matter because there's so much room for profit there that they can coexist peacefully with Apple and just live on those fat margins.
Well, but I mean, Mac is just the other side of the coin. So it's like, all right, you're my enemy, but at least we both operate under the same rules of engagement. This other company that's just giving everything away and letting people see under the hood, they must be destroyed. And that's the one thing they can agree on, I think.
Well, FedEx will give you $5 if you reinstall Flash.
This is this week's totally not worth it section. And it's not even like $5. They give you $5 off an order over $30. So take it from us, Flash, the security risk is not worth $5. Just pay the $5 and don't do that to yourself.
I saw the thing, somebody came up with if you have like really old school Flash, somebody came up with a Flash interpreter that runs in JavaScript. So you can render certain kinds of Flash in JavaScript, which is just wrong. That's just that's terrible. Well, prison inmates can soon get tablet computers.
This is a very interesting one. I guess this keeps them calm, keeps them busy.
Access to media.
Keeps them in contact with their family. That was a big thing. Now, I know a lot of jails, I don't know about federal prisons, they have this new thing where like the commissary and the phone payments and all of that stuff is all on a touch screen in like the common room. So you can go and you log in with your prisoner ID and you can order your donuts or whatever, and you can even FaceTime. But the FaceTime is like $5 a minute. So I wonder if the tablet use will also be metered in that way.
The article went out of its way to describe the situation as we want to make sure that we don't charge taxpayers for this, and we want to also make sure that we don't get in a situation where inmates can run up huge bills because that's counterproductive to like what prison is for. But then I think it's a commercial entity and these things are going to happen regardless.
Of course, you can get TVs in prison and, music, MP3 players, that type of thing. I'm pretty sure you can have. So I don't know. It's a lot of people have this hardline mentality that they're there to be punished. We mustn't give them anything fun to do. I mean, there's a lot of people. A tablet would be a long way to go, but there's a lot of people. It's like, you're going to lock me in a room with a computer and feed me 3 times a day? Where do I sign up for this? And, so are you giving that person a perfect life, I guess is the question.
Well, let's be clear. They're not getting an iPad or any kind of reasonable Android device. They're getting something specially made for prisons, probably made out of plastic so you can't kill somebody with it. Because, I mean, the glass on an iPad, you could totally kill somebody with.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those old, crappy, flexible touch screens. But if you got nothing to do all day, I mean, just think about like having, the Amazon ebook library or whatever. That would be huge in prison. So I don't know. I don't feel strongly one way or another about whether or not we should give prisoners tablets, but it's a fun question to ask.
In Norway, they've got an underwater drone that fires lasers to protect salmon.
Now, next time you're sitting in front of a plate of salmon that's beautifully grilled and you're just about to cut into it, I want you to remember 2 words: sea lice. Salmon have sea lice. Mostly, it's just a problem in giant salmon farming places. It's like a public school, one salmon gets the lice and then every salmon has the lice.
But it's fatal.
But these amazing drones underwater with image recognition, they can tell the difference between, just other crap in the water and sea lice and lasers. And they shoot the sea lice and destroy them.
Let's see evolution come up with a defense for that.
Now, you might be thinking, oh, they're shooting lasers at the salmon. No, don't worry. Salmon are naturally strong against energy weapons. It just bounces off their scales. They're fine.
Oh, those happy little salmon. At least they'll survive long enough to be delicious.
And lice-free.
They're cooked and eaten in the most humane way possible.
If I was going to be raised to be cooked and eaten, and I can just do so without lice. That's a plus. I'll take it. That's a small victory.
A very small victory. But, farmers got a farm. So that's pretty much it for the news this week. We've got a lot of content lined up for this week, so that should be interesting. Be sure to check out our pfSense VPN video. It may be out already, or it may be getting ready to come out. Not sure. And big thanks to our patrons. We will see you next week. I'm Wendell.
I'm Ryan.
And we'll see you next week. Or, you can find us on the forums too. There's that. So, awkward outro over.